Welcome to the Breakthrough Success Podcast, helping you achieve that breakthrough you've always been looking for in your business. And now your host, Mark Guberti.
Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Mark Guberti, and this is the podcast for marketers and small business owners who are looking for the breakthrough for their businesses. I'm very excited about this show. For episode 68 of the Breakthrough Success Podcast, we are going to talk about finding inspiration to power through life's challenges with our guest, Christine McAlister. Christine is a business and success coach, as well as an expert on turning tragedy into triumph. Her company, Life with Passion, helps high-achieving, motivated women to create successful, freedom-based businesses they love. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Christine to the show.
Hi, Mark. Thanks so much for having me.
Christine, it's a pleasure to have you on the Breakthrough Success Podcast. But before we go deep into finding that inspiration to power through life's big challenges, I'd love to get some backstory. So why did you start Life with Passion?
Sure. So I've always known that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I'm also a huge animal lover. So I was the kid running the pet sitting business in the neighborhood and, selling cookies and lemonade and all of those things. I had a side hustle from the time I was in school, but I really didn't know how to start my own business. I feel like a lot of times in school, what we're trained to become is really good employees instead of entrepreneurs. And so I was always really great at school and playing by the rules. And so even though I had this desire to start my own business, I didn't know how. And so I got regular jobs after I graduated from grad school. And yet I still had this desire to do my own thing. So I started an online marketing business on the side of my 9 to 5 and grew that to the point where when I quit, I replaced my full-time income in the very first month. And I did that for several years and really enjoyed it and was totally booked out. But I also knew that wasn't the end all for me in terms of business. And so through my own challenges in life, which I know we're going to dive into, I did the hard work to figure out what that next level for me was. And what I discovered was that I'm really great at helping other people uncover their gifts, their passions, and turn those into successful businesses. And specifically with women, because when I was getting started, I was hanging out with a bunch of guys who were absolutely killing it in business. And I was looking around and I was the only woman in the room. So I decided that when I was starting my own business to help others become entrepreneurs, I was going to focus on helping women and being the mentor that I wished I'd had. And so that's how I started Life with Passion.
Christine, thank you for sharing us that story of how you got started. And we'll definitely be getting into some of the challenges later. And more importantly, how to turn tragedy into triumph. But before we can turn tragedy into triumph, we are in that tragedy stage. We are in that rut. And I feel like when people are there, it seems like everything's going wrong. All their past achievements look dull in comparison to all the bad things happening now. So how do we continue to feel good about ourselves in the midst of tragedy?
That's a great question. So I think that I think a lot of times one of the things that makes tragedy feel even worse is that we put pressure on ourselves to feel a certain way or to get through grief looking like this or looking like that or to just get over it already. And I feel like one of the biggest things that I have learned in my own journey and then in helping others with this when you're going through tragedy is to really give yourself a ton of permission to take care of yourself. It's not something that we do a lot of times when we're hustling in our small businesses or as marketers, like we're just kind of put our head down, get stuff done, check stuff off the to-do list. We don't really think about what it is that we need, but all of that stuff comes to the front when we're dealing with a challenge or a tragedy of any kind. And I think that's also where we begin to recover our energy and recover our passions is by actually noticing that that's the thing that we need right now, even if it feels a little counterintuitive.
Christine, thank you for sharing with us how we can continue to feel good about ourselves in the midst of that tragedy. And I really love the idea of just taking the time to care for yourself because either we are in that entrepreneurial mode or we're busy caring for other people. I mean, parents, they, in some cases, care for their children so much they don't care for themselves. That's the whole supermom idea. So I'm really happy that you shared that with us. And now that we've talked about how we can stay happy as we're in that rut and we're just trying to claw our way back, how do we turn tragedy, this state we're in, into triumph?
Sure. So one of the things that I found to be true for me in my own personal journey, which was that my first daughter, Maeve, was stillborn. She passed away shortly before she was born, very unexpected, and totally turned my world upside down. One of the things that I found in the process of grieving her death and grieving what I thought my life was going to look like and figuring out how to now be this person who'd been through this terrible thing and now people were acting weird around me because they didn't know how to talk to me and totally life-altering experience. Was that very simply I had a choice. I knew that this experience was defining for me in a lot of ways. And I knew that this was the kind of thing that people, they either turn into something good or they never recover from it, And I wanted to turn this into something good. And I wanted to be able to help other people. And I wanted to use it to become my best self. And so I think I realized that if I could survive this thing, then I could do or survive anything else. And so it kind of really put a lot of the fears, a lot of the concerns, fear of failure, fear of criticism, some of these things that have been holding me back from going big in my own business and my own life, it really put a lot of those things into perspective. And I thought, you know what, a lot of that stuff really doesn't matter anymore. And I think when we're going through our day-to-day life, we can get really wrapped up in those fears, really wrapped up in perfectionism, procrastination, kind of these habits and these thought patterns that keep us stuck. Either we're afraid of failure or maybe we're even afraid of success. And I think we've also all been through things, survived things, lived through things that if we really take a step back and look at it, we can say what I just said. Man, if I survive that, I can do this business thing. I can turn this into a triumph. I can make my life a triumph. And so I think it's like noticing, well, what are those things for you? And kind of drawing strength from having survived those things, from having walked through those things to then conquer the next challenge in your business.
Christine, thank you for sharing with us how we can turn tragedy into triumph. And I mean, in your case, that is something very tragic, and I'm very sorry to hear that. But it seems like you are you're not letting that one setback determine the whole fate of your life. You're still making things happen and continuing to grow and continuing to support the people in your life. And when we do hit that triumph stage, one of the things that people want to do is they want to stay in the triumph stage for as long as possible, and they want to get out of the tragedy stage as quickly as possible. We've talked about the tragedy stage so far, but when we're in that triumph phase, how can we stay in that triumph phase longer?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's been, at the time of this recording, it's been almost 3 years since Maeve died. And I think that what I've noticed is that it's not like I never feel, tragic or I never grieve or anything like that. But what I think has happened is I've begun to integrate the way that I behave as this person who has had this experience more into my daily life, right? In the beginning of my, of this journey and at the beginning of my business and working with women, I found it very difficult to do things like be on Facebook and see pictures of other people's kids, especially ones that were the same age as Maeve would have been. And I also found it very difficult to think about working with women who were moms because to me that was not something that I could relate to in that way, right? I wasn't the mother of a living child. And so in the beginning, I did things to allow me to still to work and make a big difference, but also that weren't going to be super triggering for me. And I think we all have these things that we can relate to, right? Whether it's a relationship ending or losing somebody or whatever it is that was difficult, we have these things that we want to avoid. But what I've noticed over the past couple of years is that it's gotten easier for me to talk about her story. It's gotten easier for me to figure out how me being open with that story helps other people to heal. And in doing so, sort of sharing about my tragedy helps me to stay in triumph longer. And it also kind of becomes a little bit more of a gray area, if you will, where it's not either tragedy or triumph. It's it's life, right? And our lives are full of these highs and lows, different heights and different depths. But the more willing we are to be embracing of both, then I think that allows us to sort of sustain the highs for longer.
Christine, thank you for sharing with us how we can stay in that triumph phase longer and how bringing up your tragedy as a way of helping others and knowing that you're healing them in a way, that is very powerful and definitely takes a lot of courage to bring that up. And I'm sure it's a healing process for you as well. And while most of the tragedies we face won't be as big as tragedies like those, there are mishaps that happen in the business side of things and certain obstacles that get in the way of our goals. So I'm wondering, how can we remove some of the obstacles that are holding us back from unlocking our true potential?
That is a great question. I think a lot of times when we work for ourselves, when we're building our businesses, we don't stop even for a minute to ask these types of questions. So I think even just doing something really, really simple that probably a lot of us don't make space for, like journaling the answer to that question, could be really powerful, right? And that's free and it doesn't take any time. But I really believe that we've got to sort of take a step back in order to get the full picture. And while that might sound cliche, I think a lot of us just don't do it because we're just too busy doing or going on to the next thing without even asking ourselves, why? Is this even really what I want to be creating? Is this even really what I want my life to look like? Or am I just pursuing because it seems to be the next thing for my business or my life? So I think that's one thing, is taking a step back and doing something like a journaling exercise, even if it's just for 5 minutes. That can be really, really impactful. And I would say that the other thing that I see has been very, very helpful for me and my community is the willingness to get a mentor who's farther along than you to help you out, and to hire somebody who you feel like really has something that you want and can teach you something that you want to learn, and also is going to be there to hold your hand and kick your butt. One of my friends, Adrienne Dorison, has this great saying where she says, a lot of times it's like we are inside of a jar and we can't see our own label. We just have our heads down and we're going and doing and achieving and whatever. And yet it's hard for us to see our true potential because, we've never lived in anyone else's body. We don't know what it's like to be anyone but ourselves. And so, for instance, the things that come the most naturally to us, a lot of times we can automatically assume, oh, that's not a big deal. Everyone must know how to do that because it's easy for us. But that's probably actually our very zone of genius. And so do you have someone in your life who can say, hey, Mark, oh my gosh, do you know that that's the thing that you do, but that not very many people know how to do, and people would pay you a lot of money to do that? I think that's the kind of value in unlocking your highest potential that somebody like a mentor or a coach can bring.
And I really love that reference to a mentor or coach. I've heard a lot of people who they seem like really successful, like role models say, I have a mentor or a coach who's helping me. And I find it fascinating that seems to be a common recurring strategy to conquering the obstacles that stand in your way. And one of the things that you do is you help women create freedom-based businesses. And I'm wondering if you could share your insights with us and go a little deeper into how we can create those freedom-based businesses for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that theme that you're getting of these mentors and coaches, right? Because I know that when I first started thinking about this, I sort of had this perception that, oh, well, I mean, I should know how to do all of this, right? Like if I'm a smart person, because I always did well in school and whatever, then I should just automatically know how to do this. But the truth is, like, we're not taught it. And then we put all this pressure on ourselves to know how to do something right away. And if we don't know how to do it, then we start to question like whether we're meant to be able to do it. And we have all this self-doubt. And, I had the opportunity to work at the Olympics 3 times. And one of the years I worked at basketball, right? And so I got to see the US team, which is like, the conglomeration of the best NBA players. And one of the things that really struck me is, I mean, these guys are the best in the world, right? And they still have a coach. Like, they have a coach their entire careers, these professional athletes who make so much money, right? All the Olympic athletes, they have a coach, they have somebody to help them, get to that next level, even though there is no next level, right, for them. And so I think that that's really important to remember as we're looking to achieve more and be more, do more and have more. Specifically in terms of how I think anybody could start a freedom-based business as long as you have access to the internet. You want to start by looking at your areas of expertise and how you can quickly replace your income if you're looking still to move out of a job or to increase your income. If you're already out of a job and you're wanting to grow a business like this by offering premium price products or services. So you already have something that you're an expert in, whether or not you know it, whether or not you recognize it, whether or not you believe it, and you have something that you can package and help a niche with. And so when you offer your services online, then you can be location independent. The biggest hassle you have to worry about is time zones, right? So which is fine. You can use an online scheduler. And really, it's about building relationships and helping people who are a half a step, a couple steps or more behind you and want to learn about or use the thing that you already know.
Christine, thank you for sharing with us how we can create a freedom-based business. And one of the things that I love about mentors, just to go on about that topic and segue into the next question, is that they definitely save us a lot of time. I mean, yes, you could go on Google and find the answers to all the insights that most mentors can provide, but the fact that the mentor is tailored towards you is a real game changer because they're going to save you a lot of time. And speaking of the whole idea of trying to save as much time as possible, utilize it properly, how can we find time to grow our businesses and fulfill the other responsibilities in our lives?
Yeah, definitely a mentor saves you a lot of time, right? Anything that you invest in your business should be to get you where you want to be faster and with less headache and like less guessing. And so speed up your timeline and speed up your results. And I think a mentor also grows who you are personally. And so that's sometimes a lot more impactful than buying, a particular piece of software or something. But I think that juggling life, family, other responsibilities, whatever that looks like for us is, while we're growing a business, this is such an important topic because ultimately we're growing a business to have freedom, right? To have freedom of choice, to have options to live our lives the way that we want to, whether that's working all the time or whether that's only working a few hours a week, right? And so I think it's important to be clear about what you want your life to look like. And certainly there's a lot of work in the beginning, but also it's not worth sacrificing the entire quality of your life to have a business because at some point you will want more than just the business, even if you love to work like I do. And I'm sure a lot of you listening do. I love to work, but if that's all I ever did, at some point it would feel hollow or empty, even though my life and my work is super fulfilling. So giving yourself permission to step away in order to become more productive, even if you have to tell yourself, I'm going to take a day off so that when I come back tomorrow, I'm going to be 10 times more productive. If that's the reason you need to give yourself to step away, then do it. I think that I really believe that a lot of us waste a lot of time because we're not being super strategic and we're feeling overwhelmed like we have to do all of these things, when in reality, what I see and work on with my clients is that they do best and book out their businesses when they're choosing one strategy for marketing, let's say, and bringing in clients that feels really, really fun for them. And they're sticking with that. And that's when they get momentum, as opposed to, I have to be on every social media platform. I have to do this. I have to have this. I have to have this funnel. Like, no, you actually don't. Like, you, in a lot of cases, it's so much simpler than you think. And so I think even believing that mindset, that it can be simpler than I think, and am I going to show up even for just 5 minutes today and connect and build some real relationships with people, like that is going to get you a lot more results than feeling like you need the perfect website or the perfect funnel or whatever. And like you have to hide out behind those things and work away at them, in the cave to get all of that stuff done, and you don't have any time for your family. So I think it's really important to go, what's the end goal of all of this? And if it's to get clients, then really you get clients by building relationships.
Christine, thank you for sharing with us how we can find that time to grow our business and also have time for the other parts of our life. And at this point, I ask for a big challenge that people have faced along the journey. We've had to focus on your stillborn, which is probably the biggest challenge. I don't know, like personally, but it could be one of the, if not the biggest challenge you face. But going on the business side, what is one big challenge you faced while trying to expand your brand? And if you could share with us a powerful lesson that you learned during that challenge as well.
Yeah, certainly on the professional side. I think that one of the things that's really surprised me is that while I'm very, very ambitious, I recognized that I had this like kind of sneaky fear of success and a fear that if I grew my business to a certain point, then I would be too busy. I would be too busy and I would be too stressed. And so that kind of popped up and I went, oh, well, that's interesting. Like, what can I do to put different belief in place and different actions that come out of that belief in order to be able to grow my business, but without having to work more, right? To be able to scale without burnout. And so what I did was, first of all, I began to tell myself it was possible because I looked around and I said, okay, all these people are in front of me and they're not working 23 hours and 59 minutes a day, right? And they're making more money and they're serving more people and having more impact. And so just beginning to recognize that it was a thing for me, and to even begin to be able to share with the people in my life, hey, will you kind of notice if I appear too stressed or too busy? Because that's a checkpoint for me to go, where can I simplify? Where can I get back to the things that are actually getting me results? Like I was telling you, right? Where can I work with my own coach or mentor to streamline some things in my business and give up some things that aren't working for me, and kind of like let this fear of success go, so that I'm not kind of stuck between, the fear of failure that I used to have, that I think a lot of entrepreneurs have on one side, and then on the other side, I'm boxed in by this fear of success. It's sort of going to keep me small and stuck in this in-between place. But instead, getting conscious of it, because it's not a rational thing by any means, and then putting both some strategies and some new like mindset beliefs in place to help me to trust that this is going well, right? I can trust myself. I can hire more team members. I can put more pieces in place. There's always a solution. I think it was Marie Forleo who said everything is figure outable, and I don't have to figure all of that out by myself. Again, kind of taking that pressure off. I think that's a huge, huge, huge lesson.
Christine, thank you for sharing with us that big challenge and the powerful lesson you learned. And Breakthrough Success listeners know that I'm a really big bookworm. So I'm wondering if you could recommend 3 great books that would benefit the listeners.
Yes, I love books. So I love this question. So one of my favorite books to help you just think about what's possible is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. That's a fantastic one. Another book that I have really enjoyed, it's hilarious, it's highly irreverent and very helpful, is You Are a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero. She's so great and so funny, and so her stuff is really, really useful. And then another book that I think is really fun when you're growing your business and learning to think like an entrepreneur instead of an employee is the book How Rich People Think. And so I highly recommend that one too.
Christine, thank you for giving us those great book recommendations. For anyone wondering where they can find those books, they will be in the show notes at markgilberti.com/E68. Before we close out this episode and let the listeners know where we can find you, I've asked you a lot of questions. And with that in mind, what do you believe is one question that we need to be asking ourselves more often?
Am I creating what I actually want? Is this the thing that feels right and good and the path for me? Or am I doing it because somebody else told me this was the thing, right? Because we know that at the end of our lives, the biggest regret that people have is that they didn't live a life that was true to what they wanted, that they lived a life according to what somebody else wanted for them or what somebody else said or did or told them. And so I think that self-awareness and being willing to ask that question of, am I creating what I actually want? That is the key to finding entrepreneurial success, happiness, and putting the pieces in place to set yourself up for doing just that.
Christine, thank you for sharing that great question that we should ask ourselves more often, and for sharing all of your great insights throughout this episode. And before we put this episode to a close, for all the listeners wondering, Christine, where can we find you on the web?
Sure. Yes. So I have a gift for all of you Breakthrough listeners. I'd love to give you a top 5 ways to get your first or next client workbook that you can work through to help you get more clients and more customers and more cash in your business right now. And you can go to lifewithpassion.com/breakthrough to get that.
Christine, thank you for providing us with that link. That link and all the show notes will be at markgilberti.com/E68. Christine, it was a pleasure to have you on the Breakthrough Success Podcast.
Thanks so much. I love being here, Mark.
To never miss an episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever player you are using. If you are a regular listener and haven't done so already, I would greatly appreciate it if you could give this podcast a review or a rating. 2 ways you could do this are through markgilberti.com/iTunes or markgilberti.com/Stitcher. That ends this episode. Don't forget, dream big, achieve greatness, and unlock your potential today.
Want your tweets get retweeted to my 360,000 Twitter followers? All you have to do is say something nice about the Breakthrough Success Podcast and include the link markgilberti.com/iTunes. Once you've posted that tweet, email me, mark@markgilberti.com, and I will retweet your tweet to my 360,000 followers.
This podcast is a production done by Mark Gilberti. For more insights, head on over to markgilberti.com.